Campesín pequeña rample de la rampla de Barcelona. Me encontré una chiquita.
Okay, well, let's call
Pero la llevo ya a mi
it.
casa.
Welcome back. And we are lucky enough this time to have a great guest who is with us for the first time. And that is Ann Lester, the former head of retirement at J.P. Morgan. So she's right up our alley. And there's a few things I was warned in advance that we might be talking about how she'd be revealing her three-step strategy for saving smart over the holidays while still enjoying the season. But we'll see. And since this is my first time, and lucky that I am, and the rest of us too, why don't we just let Ann go ahead and introduce and tell us all about herself? So please take it away, Ann.
Well, thanks, Jay, and I'm really happy to be here myself. I think talking about saving as you head into the holiday season, especially this year, seems like a challenging thing to be doing, but I've spent my whole career, almost 30 years, helping people save and invest those savings for retirement at JP Morgan Asset Management. I was head of something called Retirement Solutions, which is the group that built and managed target date funds and other retirement investments for people inside their 401k plans or inside their IRAs. So I've spent a lot of time looking at the way people use their money and save it over the long term. And, one of the things that I've done since I've stepped away from my job at JP Morgan about a year and a half ago is to really focus on bringing a message straight to people and trying to talk more to people. So it's great to have this chance to chat with people.
And we appreciate the fact that you're chatting with us right now. And I bet it is a challenge to keep people happy, to keep people from, well, I would suspect that a lot of times people in retirement either don't want to spend enough to keep themselves happy, or they want to spend too much so that the happiness ends too soon. Is that right?
I think one of the biggest, most difficult challenges out there is figuring out how to manage your spending once you've stopped working and don't get a paycheck anymore. And you've been trained for so long to save money. And I think for so many people, especially, I think about my parents in their late 80s, or even, a little bit younger than that, who grew up either in the Depression or sort of with the remnants of the Depression hanging around their family. And I think it can be really scary to actually allow yourself to dip into your savings. And the challenge with retirement savings is that's what they're for, is to spend.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, because there's, if you buy an annuity with some of those savings, you turn those savings into a paycheck, and then it's really obvious how much you can spend. If you don't, though, and you're relying on something like the 4% rule, or, spending a certain percentage of your portfolio, or maybe you're following the minimum required distribution formula from your IRA or from your 401k plan, if you left your money there, that can lead to some underspending, actually. And it's tricky because you don't want to overspend, because if the markets go down
right.
to be 105, you've got to really be careful. But at the same time, in our experience, and we did a ton of research about this while I was still at JP Morgan, on average, it looked like people, often were underspending and just taking the minimum out because they didn't really know how much they could spend. So it's a real challenge.
Boy, I'll say, I know a frequent guest, luckily on this show, Dr. Wade Pfau. I don't know if you know who he is
Wade.
or whatever.
Yep,
I believe he's the one that said, don't ever plan on the day you're going to die, because it ain't going to happen that way.
I think that's absolutely true.
And that is. So you've got a lot to balance there. And we all need people like yourself to help us do that balancing. Because you know what? I don't know. Some people think they can do it themselves, but I think there's too much emotion to do it all by yourself. I want to go out and buy new records, vinyl records. I wanted to go do it every day, but I got to slow myself down.
Yeah, I'm a spender, and I've had to create a lot of rules around myself, so I don't spend too much money. I actually was a terrible saver until I was into my mid 30s, really terrible at it. And it was only when I actually started learning about behavioral economics for my job that I thought, oh, that it's not because I'm stupid. It's
No.
the way my brain is wired. And somehow just learning that made it easier for me to say, okay, I think I know what to do now. I can't give myself the choice in the moment of whether I want to choose to spend money or choose to save it. I just have to save it before I even see it, frankly. So, that money can't burn a hole in my pocket. But, I think the spending thing, though, especially if you're trying to make those decisions yourself, I think is really difficult because, as Wade said, you don't know, how long you're going to need that money for. And you don't know what the markets are going to do. So that uncertainty can make it really, really emotionally frightening to try to spend that money. And one of the things I always think about is course correcting. So if you say,
Yeah.
let's say you can probably afford to take 4 or 5% out of your portfolio if it's invested maybe 50-50 stocks and bonds, that's not a crazy amount to take out. But if the market's down, you've got to cut back, and you just have to have a plan for what to do. If the market goes up for a couple of years, maybe you can take a little more out, but you can't count on always being able to take the same amount out every year. And that's, I think especially as people get older, that kind of management can be a little challenging, which is why I
No.
actually think that financial products that help generate predictable kinds of income, whether it's, the reverse mortgage that I'm personally a little less familiar with. I mean, I know how they work, but or an annuity or some kind of other financial product that helps create that steady pace stream, especially as people get a little older, I think is a really helpful thing.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's tough. And you say you have, I'm just reading some of the things that have been written about you, because there's so much that has been written about you, is coping with high levels of financial anxiety, which is kind of what we're talking about here, and guilt while spending over the the holiday season. My problem is I enjoy the guilt. It's somehow when I've spent too much money on something, that guilt seems to make me feel so good. Maybe it isn't really guilt, I just call it that, but I mean, I understand what you're saying. So, we need to overcome those things.
To me, one of the most pleasurable things is giving someone, finding just the right gift for somebody, and if you get the chance to watch them open it. I mean, I
Yeah.
have kids. My husband, one of the things we've done though in the last few years is, we are fortunate enough to really not need any stuff anymore. And I think a lot of people, look around their houses, especially having been trapped in them for a year and a half, and think, boy, do I have a lot of stuff. And so I think the trick is really to not feel any compulsion to get somebody a present because you're supposed to get them a present. And my husband and I have
Mhm.
actually stopped giving each other gifts if we don't find something that we think is really perfect.
No, we do
Um,
the same.
yeah.
I just give my wife something I want. Doesn't
That's
that
not
solve the
that's not the
problem?
same thing.
No?
That's not the same thing. It's like
Okay.
I used to give my mom dark chocolate when I was a kid because I knew she hated it. So yeah. Yeah. Yeah, she still reminds me of that sometimes, but
Yeah. So, yeah, I know we've got too much. We like to collect weird things, like not just normal antiques, but weird things like that. I'm a collector of vinyl records, I think I mentioned before, and they come out new ones every week. So it's definitely a challenge to fight that. But
well, and I think something that, maybe the holidays or maybe New Year's gives us a chance to do. Again, I'm not super big on resolutions for their own sake, but I do think that, the beginning of the year, or for me, it's actually September when school starts, somehow always feels like a chance for a new beginning.
uh-huh.
Birthday, right? There's a lot of research that people have talked about that shows that it's easier to stick to things if it's at a sort of anniversary moment of whatever kind. And again, New Year's is typically one of them. But I do think the holidays does give us a chance to, if we give ourselves permission, to step back and think about why the gift giving gives us pleasure. I mean, are you buying a present out of guilt? Are you genuinely trying to share something with somebody else? And if you can spend a moment to dig into the underlying reason behind the present, you might be able to, especially if you're, watching your wallet this season, you might be able to come up with some other ideas that actually help you accomplish that thing.
Right.
Trying to, maybe it's an emotional connection to the person, maybe it's a shared moment. I mean, there are plenty of ways to do that, whether it's, just doing something together.
Yeah.
Another thing my husband and I do often is give each other presents. I mean, everybody talks about it, presents of experience, but those experiences don't have.
I call them memory, because I'm older, their memories create memories now while you can.
Yep.
And I think that might be the best kind of gift to actually give and share without being selfish in any way.
A couple years ago, I guess it was the last Christmas before COVID, we had, the whole crazy extended family ended up at my house for Christmas. So there were like 12 or 13 of us. And I always made gingerbread cookies with the kids, right? And it was always something we did, and we always decorated them. And for some reason, it just didn't happen. I had the cookies made, but I hadn't gotten around to putting the frosting on. And it's not much fun to do by yourself, right? So I just pulled out this tray of cookies on Christmas Eve, and all 13 of us stood around our island in our kitchen, and we all spent 2 hours just doing these crazy decorations for cookies. And we all had a glass of champagne, at least those of us who were of the age to do that. And it was honestly one of the best holiday memories I've ever had.
Yeah.
And my sister-in-law suggested actually this year that we just do a white elephant. So we're not even exchanging presents. We all just we had a gift limit of $35, and everybody's bringing one present, and we're putting one present under the tree. And, we are, again, fortunate that that's not our purses are not that slim, but we just all decided we just don't need to, it's not necessary.
Right. It's not necessarily a matter of money. It's a matter of joy and what makes us all happy.
Yeah.
We talked about gingerbread houses and where it all began in the first hour of the show, and the Brothers Grimm and all that. So this is, perfect.
Right on topic. Yeah. Tis the season. Tis the season. And actually, I bake cookies for people. When I was, I'm baking more cookies tonight, right? That's what I do. I put them in boxes and ship them off. So.
Well, I'll be over. Okay.
Yeah.
I just lost 120 pounds this last year, but not the way you'd want to. But we're not going to get into me right now. But still, I love those cookies.
Yep.
So yeah, and memories, trips, things like that. That could be a little more costly, but then again, it doesn't have to be either.
Doesn't have to be.
Doesn't have to be a trip around the world to create great memories with your children, grandchildren, family, and that kind of thing.
I think shared time. I mean, again, if I think about some of the times that my children spent with my parents or their grandmother, it was doing an activity together, reading a book together, making a scrapbook together, right? I mean, those things are so amazing. Or actually, my parents used to take my kids on elder hostels. I guess they're called Road Scholars now. So they'd take these trips with week long, and for Christmas they'd give them a memory book with photos and my mother's remembrances of the trip. She'd write sort of do a scrapbook for them, and those are fabulous presents.
Yeah, they certainly are, and it's a good way to get through the season without having to, with bringing joy to others, not to mention yourself, and not having to spend a whole lot of what do you call that stuff? Money. That's it.
Yeah. And again, I'm always so struck by that, especially if the kids are little. I mean, our kids like the wrapping paper and the empty boxes more than they ever liked what was inside of them. And I think, again, just the temptation to keep giving people more stuff is overwhelming. And when kids are little, Michelle Singletary is a columnist for the Washington Post. She writes a great column on sort of watching your money, and she wrote a column a couple of weeks ago about how she used to take toys that her kids hadn't played with for 6 months and wrap them back up and put them under the tree, and they were just as happy, because they were new again, right? When you have a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, they don't remember that they had that toy before. So I thought that was pretty funny. I never went that far, but I thought that was a good idea.
Yeah, I used to do things like, when I was a younger adult and giving presents, and even though they weren't big time presents, or maybe was wrap up presents and do like a cityscape and even build bridges and things like that with it. And, it got to the point where there didn't even need to be anything inside the box anymore.
Well, again, what is the purpose of the present? It's a reflection of your understanding of the person that you're giving the gift to, and trying to give them something that will help create that emotional connection, I think. And there's so many ways to do that don't involve spending a lot of money. And the best present I ever got was my husband.
Let's hear it.
Snores, and he found online this pillow that has a noise sensor in it, and if he starts snoring, it buzzes at him and he stops.
Wow.
It was a fabulous present, best ever present. It wasn't, I think it was $50, but my goodness, that thing was great.
That allowed you to have more sleep, right?
Exactly, and he stopped getting elbowed, so I think it was a win-win for both of us.
You want to take a minute out to tell us about your upcoming book?
Sure. I'm working on a book. It's got a working title right now, but it's Save Smart, How to Hack Your Brain, Ditch the Guilt, and Achieve Financial Freedom. And it's really aimed at younger folks, people in their 20s and 30s who are starting out. And one of the things I really want people to understand is how powerful time is when you're in your 20s and 30s. And I know it's rocket fuel for your investments in your portfolio. And the dollars that if you can start saving for retirement in your 20s and 30s, you will have to save so much less money,
right,
or enjoy such a better lifestyle and have so much more security than if you wait. And I think the temptation for people to say, oh, I'll wait until I'm a little more established, I'll wait until, and I think it's so hard to wrap your brain around the power of compound returns. And, that line just goes whoop and goes straight up like a ski jump. But it takes a little while to start doing that. But, if you get 7% returns, which is not super aggressive, your money doubles every 10 years. So that money you save in your 20s is going to be hugely important to you in your 60s and 70s. But so many people, and I made this mistake too, just wait until they're 30 or 35 until I can afford it. And, then you've got kids and you've got a mortgage and, the demands build up. So, putting a little bit away while you maybe are younger and single. And, something else that I really want to focus on in the book is what we call the hedonic treadmill, which is a very fancy way to talk about lifestyle creep. And, what happens is you get a raise, you get some nicer things. And, the second, the day you get the raise, you're so happy and you maybe buy a nicer car. And then, in 3 months, you don't even notice how much nicer your car is. I tell a story of somebody who, was, not that this is personal, but was driving a 15-year-old clunker whose windows didn't work. And you were finally able to replace it with windows. And like the first 3 weeks, you drive around going, my windows work. And then, you take it for granted. So you lose that pleasure. And, one of the most important things for saving for retirement is not allowing your lifestyle to go up step every time your income goes up. And, a great way to help build up those savings, I think a lot of younger folks, when they're just starting out, especially if they've, got a college degree or in kind of a white collar job, tend to see their wages, but this is true for a lot of people, wages grow kind of quickly for the first 5 or 10 years. And if that's true, trying to save half of those raises, like if you get a raise, if you get a 2% or a 3% raise, just try to tuck half of that away in savings. Let yourself enjoy the other half of that raise. You do want to feel like you're getting ahead, but save some of it. And that way you do two things. You save more money, but you also have a lower lifestyle to replace when you retire. So you actually don't need to save as much money.
And
to
you
be
won't
happy
miss
in
it as
retirement.
much. You
won't miss it. Exactly. Well,
And
you
what
won't have anything to miss because you will have saved
Right.
enough. But
Right.
but I think the trick is if you don't increase the amount that you're saving and your lifestyle gets better and better, you have more and more of a hole to fill when you stop working, and that's really painful.
And when you're a lot younger and you're putting away lesser amounts, you probably won't notice it nearly that much anyway.
I talk to people about increasing their savings rate by 1% a year, which seems like nothing. But if you're 22 and you start at 1% and you get to a 10% savings rate by the time you're 32, and you get a company match of 3 or 5%, that's going to put you in a pretty good spot, even if it takes you 10
Right.
years to build up to that, and you won't even notice.
Right. And I think of dollars in your retirement, whatever kind of products you have. Every dollar bill is like a little person working for you,
It
in the
really
mine
is.
or wherever. And,
Yeah.
if you can have a whole army of those people working for you as you get older, I mean, there's going to be losses. There's going to be the quote sequence of returns, things and that we don't need to get into right now. There's going to be little things and setbacks. But the more that's there, the less you'll notice any setbacks. And those setbacks will not make a huge difference in your lifestyle.
One of the things I also want to talk about in my book, and you talked about this whole fear-greed thing, right? And having to manage your emotions when you're investing, as well as when you're spending or not spending or trying not to spend. But when you're investing money, something that people forget is if the markets go down, you only really lose money if you sell.
Right,
And if
exactly.
you don't sell, it's a paper loss, but it's not a real loss. And it is so hard for people, especially when you're older and worried about your portfolio. There are too many stories of people in '08 who just said, I can't take it anymore, and sold right at the bottom. That's such a classic thing to see. And then they were afraid to get back in and, really destroyed
Yeah.
their retirements
And they
because
did
it
a lot
was,
of that with their homes too. And look what's happened to home values.
it's so painful, especially if you didn't have to sell. And again, if
Right,
you needed a year's living expense, just sell that. Don't sell everything, right? But
right,
and
right.
I think this last time around when COVID hit in March of 2020, I do think the statistics and the reports that I saw at the time said that fewer people kind of fell
Wow.
into that trap of selling, which I think is good. It doesn't mean that the markets will never go down. They
Yeah,
may very well go down, but not panicking and getting rid of everything, right?
yeah,
I talk about the importance of being right risked for where you are in life. And
yeah.
if you're, 75 or 80 years old, you probably shldn't have
Almost
100% of your
there.
money in stocks, right? You really shouldn't. So you shouldn't feel that pressure to sell either.
So believe it or not, we are almost at the bottom or the bottom of the hour, and I don't want to
Wow.
keep you overtime unless you want to, but I'd love to have you back another time. But
Sure, that'd be terrific.
is there a place, people, or a website or anything where listeners can get on some kind of a list of yours so they know when
Sure.
your book is ready or anything like that? Go
And
ahead and
Lester,
please yeah.
yep, and Lester.com, ANNELESTER.com. And I've got links up to my Twitter account, my Instagram account, my LinkedIn account, and I'm putting out a ton of tips and ideas on how to save and how to approach the holidays on my social media,
Oh,
which you
that's
can find
great.
through my website. Yeah.
I'll be connecting on LinkedIn and whatever else I can as soon as I can. But I want to
Fabulous.
thank you for myself and for the listeners. I think this has been a great, great half hour and a real highlight of my whole show for the last several years. So I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Well, thank you.
And
Happy to do
and
it.
and thank you so much. Well, I've said it again, but you can tell I'm excited about it. And I do want to wish you stay safe and have a great, great holiday season with your whole family, okay?
Well, thank you so much. I hope the same for you and a very happy new year.
And thank you so much. Take care of yourself.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Empecé en pequeña rample de la Rampla de Barcelona. Me encontré una chiquita, pero la llevo ya a mi casa. Empecé en pequeña rample.